I was primary school teacher in Durham, and took on the role of director of music at a prep school, where I was in a very privileged position of teaching music from 2-year-olds through to year 6, year 7, 2 lessons a week all the way through, which was brilliant to look at musical progression and what you could actually do with so much time. And it was at that point I started looking into Kadai methodology to enhance what I was doing. I had a very practical approach to teaching anyway. So that was about 8 years ago now. And then when I finished there after 6-7 years, that was when I had my first child. My interest moved into music from birth, well, from bump and birth, looking at how music could be used specifically in the early years as well. And I set up a nursery in Durham that's a music-based nursery, Do Re Mi Day Nursery, which gave a brilliant opportunity to explore how music could be used on a daily basis with children without parents, carers present. And then I also ran alongside music classes that parents came to with the children. So I had the combination of both. So that's been running for about 8 years. And I've also just recently taken on another nursery in New York just to add to things to do in my spare time. So I'll start sharing my screen because I have got a PowerPoint. I'm going to look at why we use singing in the early years to lead to how we use it with speech and language development specifically. That's what I've been asked to talk about tonight, and some projects I've led in Durham for several nurseries and childminders, specifically with the aim of how to use music with funded twos. There was a lot of government money for funding for twos, and the area of speech and language, after all this money was spent, they were saying, but with the language still isn't where we need it to be. So I was involved in a pilot project to see how music could be used to narrow the gap after they'd seen the impact that music had in my own setting on speech and language development, and how my funded twos, the progression in speech and language development was huge, how they'd come on. So that was rolled out through. So we'll go through that, but I'll try and share my screen, and I've got some videos embedded in this presentation, so I'm hoping they work as well. So we'll see how we get on. Right. Can we all see that? Hope so. Right. Okay, so focusing on supporting speech, language and communication through music. So I'll just start off with, this might be things that you are well familiar with, but we're just thinking of why are we doing this? Now, obviously the music is multifaceted, but specifically, although I have a wealth of instruments in my nursery now using my music classes, I do tend to use wooden, quite natural instruments, fair trade instruments, rather than sort of just because that's how I tend to use it. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about is actually focusing on the voice and rhyme and singing, with the focus being on speech and language development. So why this singing based approach? Singing has a profound effect upon children's physical, the social, emotional and intellectual development, because through singing we physically experience, because you yourself is making that sound. So it's the multi-sensory learning. So for a child, it's all encompassing rather than external use of an instrument, although that obviously has its place as well. But particularly at this age, we're focusing on twos, thinking of the purpose of speech and language, the fact that they are producing this sound and they're experiencing the music they're producing. By slowing the voice down and in rhyme and through simple songs and exaggerating movements, phonetic sounds are so much easier to hear. And I'm going to go into that in a bit more depth. Through singing, increase a lot of language and vocabulary through songs and rhymes. We often use language and vocabulary we don't necessarily use in everyday speech, and also it gives that greater phonetic awareness. The more language a child knows, it aids their phonics and therefore their literacy skills. Constant repetition of songs and rhymes expands memory, but it also does more than that. It's the constant repetition that enables the speech and language development, having a smaller repertoire of material, but really using it well. And I'm going to come to that as well. Through focusing on these singing and these rhymes, we've seen such great impact on concentration span, listening skills, alongside doing the songs and the rhymes, using actions and adding pulse and things. It's working on the gross motor skills and refining it down to the fine motor skills. And then there's so many other things it does through this. It aids obviously communication, their social interaction, social confidence. They can express individuality. There's so much working alongside peers, working with adults, brings in imagination. It just goes on and on. But in order to achieve all of this, it needs to be enjoyable. They've got to enjoy it, and to them, they've just got to be experiencing and enjoying. And they learn best when they're enjoying. And they don't necessarily know there's this, you've got a specific focus behind it, and they don't need to know. You just need to see them enjoying the music before your eyes. So this project I mentioned in County Durham, as I said, we got Ofsted Outstanding for our speech, and particularly focused on our funded twos and how much their speech and language had come on, and they were fascinated by the impact that music had for these children, because in my nursery I'm in the privileged position that it's not just like a music class where a parent brings a child once a week. I'm able to bring music in daily in each session. Now obviously some children might only come for a couple of days, some are full time, but by having music morning and afternoon as sort of say an adult led or space for led music time, but then also the nursery is set up in a way that children can build on their musical experiences. There's lots of exploration opportunities, and also then when you equip them with the songs and rhymes in a music time, it's amazing how they bring that into their playing things. So I do know that my nursery setting is quite specific, and as I said, I do run classes as well, but what our local authority was wanting to see was, what was I doing that was enabling the language development so much? Why were my funded twos, why was their speech so much further on than so many other nurseries, when it was something we'd all been asked to focus on? And obviously lots of nurseries were doing the story-based work and story sats. So I was asked, there was some funding available, and I was asked to work with 10 nurseries in Durham with this whole specific focus of how could speech and language development for these funded twos, but of course all the children, be enhanced through music. And the project, which I'll explain a bit more, did actually go so well that they found more money for me to run it with another 10 nurseries and then another big group of childminders as well. Now, most of the nurseries I was working with, because of what the funding was available, it was for nurseries that had a really high percentage of either non-verbal 2-year-olds or 2-year-olds with quite high speech and language issues. So it was quite challenging, but proved to be very rewarding. So I ran 3 sessions with all these nurseries. First one was slightly similar to what I'm doing with yourself tonight. It was a teaching session for the staff. Now, the staff aren't musicians per se. The staff are early years practitioners. Some of them might have had an affinity to music, but in general terms, they were seen generalist practitioners. They wouldn't count themselves as music teachers, they were nursery practitioners. So I wanted to ensure they understood what we were doing and why. So that was sort of almost a teaching bit to the practitioners. Then in the second 2 sessions, I presented appropriate material, because the big thing that came out of me spending time with nurseries was nurseries didn't know what songs and rhymes to use. They weren't sure what to do. A few knew odd nursery rhymes, some knew pop songs that children like singing, but a lot of them didn't really know. They don't have the wealth of material. So providing appropriate material for them that you know is tried and tested and works well was really, really important. Now, the sessions I did all had a gap of a few weeks between, deliberately, so that these practitioners could go back to their nurseries, put the material into practice. Then I went in and watched them teaching. The key thing was I didn't go in and take over the teaching and teach the children. I let the practitioner teach, and then I gave support and guidance of where they could go next to keep the project going. So it was over about a term and a half. For each nursery, it's about 4.5 months, so that we could see the progression of the practitioner's confidence as well as the impact on the children. So, where did I start? Might be what you're asking. So what did we start with? We started with rhymes, not singing, not pitch based, but with actual rhymes. Why did we start with these, and which ones did we use? Oh, it's going the wrong way. Hang on a sec. So why we started with rhymes was particularly with starting with practitioners who wouldn't necessarily count themselves as music specialists. You're very aware of practitioner confidence. If the practitioners aren't confident in using their own voice, they're not going to enable the children to be confident. So I didn't want to put too many barriers up for the practitioners. So giving them material that they could feel confident to deliver was really important, because actually where I was starting with the practitioners is where you start with the children. You need to start with something that you can achieve and that you can enjoy and you can do well. So it was simple rhymes, not too many words. Why start with rhymes rather than singing is because you haven't got the distraction of other layers of sound. When we start singing, obviously you're trying to pitch, they're matching, all sorts of things going on. By bringing it down just to the voice that they are producing, it simplifies it right down for them to be able to find their voice, to recognise how they are using their voice through rhyme as a first step before moving to singing. But it simplifies the number of factors that children have to be able to achieve at one time, which is actually very hard for a 2-year-old when you're trying to use words, saying it to the pulse. If you add in pitch and everything straight away for the purpose of this, it's quite a lot of layers. So the whole idea of rhymes, keeping it simple, was really important. And often using rhymes that you can play with as well. Simple rhymes that you can add words in, change words. As practitioners gain confidence, they can improvise with, and the children can improvise with as well. Rhymes that you can play with your voice, how you use your voice, lifting your voice up, bringing it down. Rhymes you can add props in with. All these different things help enable you to move to simple pitch songs. So which rhymes? Short, repetitive, simple rhymes are the best ones for this. Rhymes that use alliteration, rhymes that use rhyming words. Common structure is a sort of 4-line with rhyming ends to the lines, works really well. If rhymes follow a simple structure, there aren't too many words for the children to try and remember, or the staff. If staff are trying to worry about remembering words, if practitioners are so worried about remembering words, you can often lose how you present it. Whereas if it's a simple rhyme that you know well, that you can bring in that animation and the facial expressions, makes it a much more interactive and fun experience for the children. So rhymes that clear actions can be added to, whether that's to reinforce the language side, actions that reinforce the word, or the fact that you're saying it to the pulse to reinforce that natural pulse that you want in the children to develop and lead to other aspects of musicality. And you want the children to enjoy it. There's no point doing rhymes with lots of words they don't understand, can't say, can't manage. So finding the appropriate material is really, really important. I've got a few that I've got here to show, and always when I'm with training practitioners, I was saying about it's not just the rhyme, because it's what you do with it. If you just say the words flat and you're just saying the words like this, it's not going to have the input. It's how you bring it alive, and that is so important for the children to engage with what you're doing. And as I said, repeat, repeat, repeat. For the 2-year-olds, particularly if they're slightly disengaged because speech and language isn't their thing and focusing on a group time doesn't come naturally, that repetition and repetition allows time for them to listen, become familiar, start processing that it's happening and engaging without participating. If then the practitioner stops there, you do not get the next step of the child actually interacting and joining, because to the practitioner, they're thinking, oh, I've done it 4 times, now I'm going to stop. You're losing out on that lovely, valuable experience of the child who's processing, and now they're ready to articulate or join in, or they might not be ready to articulate, but they're joining with the actions. And then the next session, you gradually expect a little bit more. So just some examples of some of these rhymes here, and why they would be good ones for this. Banana is always a favourite, and this is a favourite from my very little right through primary school, because when you're talking, we talk really fast, and you might be finding I go too fast tonight. I do tend to talk fast. And when you're talking to a child, you say words quite quickly. Would you like a banana? What does the child actually hear? Banana. They are then trying to repeat a sound they can't fully hear. So they're saying banana or nana, because they're trying to repeat the bit they can do. And then hence, if that was for all words, that's why you get these bits of words often get the beginning or ends of words missing, or that slur sound in the middle, banana. Because if they can't hear the sound you are making, they can't repeat it accurately. So as soon as you do a voice and you slow it down, banana, banana, flap, flap, flap. This is where I need to be live in a room with you. I find this really hard with that. Banana, banana, clap, clap, clap. So you go through it and you've got the lovely consistent banana, banana at the beginning of each line. So in time as you're doing this, you'll find that some children will always join in with the banana, banana, because they can see it, they see the familiarity of it and they can repeat it. Then you've got the rhyming pairs at the end. You've got your flap, flap, flaps, clap, 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 click, 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 flick. So you've got the rhyming pairs. So again, it's the repetition of 3 words. So it might be that a child doesn't join in for the banana, banana, flap, flap, but then joins in for the last flap, clap. There's so many opportunities for a child to be able to access this rhyme and get into it and join in a different way. It might be, because normally you'd be stood on your feet, you'd be doing lovely big actions. Might be they don't join in verbally to start with. They join in with the flap, 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 clap, clap, clap. But the next time they might be saying it in their thinking voice, they do it, saying it out loud. So rhymes like this are absolutely ideal material because it's so accessible. It slows the voice down. And if you've got that really clear clap, 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 click, 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 they can really hear the sounds that you're making. Another one, slightly similar format, mice, mice, eating up the rice. Nibble, 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 nibble. Nice, nice, nice. And of course you could do all the actions, you mice, mice, eating up the rice. Nibble, nibble, nibble. Nice, nice, nice. So you can bring in the animation, you can link it to a mouse puppet or anything you like. But again, it's making the diction really clear. It's relevant to them, the mice, rice. And this is the sort of thing where you can extend it in so many different ways. You might have, I said, a mouse puppet or put out a mouse soft toy. If you're in a setting and you had time to do a musical play session, as well as you might set up things like a tuss spot with rice in, and you might find that I did that once. You found the children almost acting it out and saying it themselves and bringing it in. So a child who'd not joined in a music session was then using the rhyme in their free play, but they were saying the rhyme to the pulse and saying it in music time. Mice, mice, eating up the rice. So it's rhymes that are really, as I said, really accessible that they can get into. This is another one. It's slightly different, but this one is particularly good with using right from littlies because you can physically move them, manipulate them up like a rocket and down like the rain, and backwards and forwards like a choo-choo train. So of course you could be moving the little ones, and as they get a bit bigger, they're moving themselves and they're moving up and down. And of course they're physically experiencing what the voice is doing. As the voice goes up, their body's going up, and they love it. And then you know what little ones like? More, again. And they love the musical play aspect of that. Meanwhile, you're really reinforcing that language. Up like a rocket. And then that leads, doesn't it, on to other things with rocket and rain and all sorts, that if they want to build on it. So rhymes, notice none of these are too long. They're not like traditional nursery rhymes that might be a bit longer. They're quite short, easy for the staff to learn, easy for practitioners to learn, and you can really bring them to life in so many different ways. Repetition can be really boring if it's just the words or you do just the same thing you repeat. And you don't want to become a performing monkey where you do the rhyme totally different every time and the children are bombarded, and actually it has the opposite effect where they switch off from you. you need enough repetition, but slightly keeping the interest at the repetition, that they're still engaging with you. And that's the key skill, isn't it? That they're following you, they're with you, they're engaged, they're wanting more. But you're not to the point where you're distracting the learning. So that's 3 of the rhymes. So thinking back to the project I did now, I'm thinking back to the focus nursery. So one of the nurseries I went into after I'd been doing these rhymes, and I taught them several rhymes, and as I said, start with 1, add in 2, gradually build up the repertoire, keep a similar time of day where you're doing it, build up the pattern. I went in for a session and I sat next to a little boy, and it was that one we did, and he was joining in with the and he was so engaged, and he kept looking at me and saying, you know, more and again, and I think he even said, it makes me happy or something. And I was like, oh yes, yes. And at the end they said, now that's really interesting. They said that is one of the little boys who, when we started, wouldn't even come and sit down. He would always go off and play, which I always say is fine. Don't force the children to come and sit down for music. Some of them need to be up to experience it. They need to be doing what they were doing. But they were saying to a bystander, it might look as if he was disengaged. He was off doing different things. He was often non-verbal as well. But they said gradually what they started to do was they made it their own, the material I taught them. And they used a tambourine to sort of symbolise the beginning of the music time. And they said it's got to the point where over several weeks, as soon as the tambourine, he heard the sound, he was the first one to the carpet. And he wouldn't join in at that point, he was watching. But gradually, they were saying how he would often then go and get a tambourine and want to start rhymes at other points of the day. And they said the children were so engaged that they cancelled the nativity, and instead they were really working with parents as partners. And we really talked about how to work on the language, if any resources could go home to support it, if we could help the parents to support it. And so one parent come in and said, what's this banana thing? I don't know this. And the child keeps talking about banana. So parents did a little word sheet to send home so they could reinforce or support. Now, they may not have done to different extent, but it was including them. And then, as I said, they cancelled the nativity and instead brought the parents in for a music group time to share the rhymes they were doing with them. And then they were phoning me after Christmas saying, Jane, we need you back in. We want to know what to do next. The children are ready for more. And that was just so exciting to see how the rhymes had started that. And then we went into pitched work and songs, which was great. And that's the next thing. Once you've got...
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Flo. The captioner has sent you a message. Could you just take a look at that?
Of course I can.
Thanks.
Oh, so there you go. I told you. Yep. Can I speak more slowly? I'm sorry. I do get quite excited. Yes. I'll slow it down. Slow it down. So where do we go next? After we've started some rhymes, the children have gained confidence to join in and engage with the music practitioner or a practitioner. And we've gained some, they've learned, I'm having to go through this quite fast, but over the week's time, they're using how to manipulate their voice through the rhymes and recognise how they can use it in different ways, is when we then move to bring in the singing voice, the pitched voice. Now your practitioners are more confident at this stage, or the children themselves are. So if the transition then comes a bit more neatly, it just happens naturally. This idea of moving from rhyme to song. Now, obviously, babies are born with a natural love of music, which explains why they love watching, listening, and trying to copy your sounds when you sing together. And while they do this, they're remembering the sound of words and honing their concentration, which is great preparation for language learning. When you sing, even little babies are picking up on that intonation or the patterns of talking, which is why you find them babbling with different tones. They might sound like they're talking before they're actually talking. It sounds like it's got that dialogue because it's got the peaks and troughs, the highs and lows in it. So singing songs right from the start with babies really benefits the development of their language right from the start. As I said, that natural repetition in songs, children need to hear these same things lots and lots and lots to learn them, and that repetition. And the actions and gestures you use when you're singing, they're learning visually, they're watching your face, and they're learning these almost visual cues alongside how they're absorbing what they're taking in, the words as well as the different aspects, the music side as well. Songs have that beat, the rhythm, the alliteration, as we said, which helps them pick up on the sounds and structure of language. They really do have to listen and concentrate because of all those multifaceted aspects. So there's often that element of turn taking in singing, just like in conversations. Singing, we all have a voice, but we've all got to learn how to use it or be given that opportunity to learn how to use it. If we get it right, it becomes, in musical terms for us, far more than just singing. We'd obviously setting the children up to develop their inner hearing, the musical thinking voice, musical literacy, musical development. Naturally, by focusing on the language development in these simple songs, they are experiencing the aspects of pulse and rhyme and things, and puppets and fabrics and props and things are often ways of engaging the children and reinforcing the music aspects as well. Children develop rhythm and understanding of pitch gradually, which is why being given lots of exposure and experience for this is necessary. So where do I start with singing? Simple songs, again, just like we started with simple rhymes. When you learn to read, you don't just suddenly hand over a big thick Harry Potter book and say, go for it. And that's sometimes the mistake we can make with singing. And I'm not saying there's, it's never use more complicated songs or never put a CD player on. But if we're deliberately trying to focus on developing speech and language, and in time, in a thinking voice, musical inner hearing, or that side, the children really need to be able to hear the pitches that you need them to repeat. So starting with not too many pitches is a good place to start. And as I said, like with rhymes, a simple structure and repetitive, rhyming words, strong sense of pulse, scope for children to improvise, songs that have a gap in that you can add clapping, hopping, walking, jumping, where they can add the action or something to it. It's a great way to start bringing in them improvising, and also for them to lead it, because they can physically lead with actions, even if they're not yet confident with the voice. And then as they're confident with the singing voice, they can bring that in too. So not too many pitches. Now that's where, for those of you who are familiar with Kodály methodology, that's where that sound, that natural sound that children make, that coo-wee, me-no, the minor third, is a really good place to start, because it's pitching that children naturally find and enjoy. And there's quite a lot of songs based around those two sounds. Now, a bit like I said with rhymes, if you just deliver them flat every time, they can sound very bland and you can get a bit bored of them. But actually, if you bring them, use them in different ways and animate them, just that repetition of the two sounds is much easier for the children to grasp and hold on to before extending the range of pitches. So singing unaccompanied is important, can be really important for this point as well, because if you want them to accurately repeat the words and the pitching, they need to really be able to hear. And obviously singing with a CD can be great for certain things and enjoyment and other stuff, but when they're singing to a CD, there's lots of layers of sound, there's all the different instruments, there's different voices, it's been mass produced, and it's quite hard for them to clearly hear what they're trying to repeat. So a bit like the example I gave earlier, banana, when you say it as opposed to in a rhyme, again, they can't quite hear, so they repeat, which is often why I get the children to, so they're trying to repeat what they think the music's doing, whereas giving them a very clear pitch to anchor to hang on to, helps them to achieve that song. So if it's a simple song with simple pitching, they're more likely to gain the confidence with that quickly, which means they can move into these other things of leading, copying, using it, improvising with it, than a harder song. So we've talked about clear diction, practitioner confidence, that animation and interest, facial expressions, all for rhymes, and also always a key one for children. Often children have much higher voices than we do. It's so much easier. We just can often start a song without thinking, we started too low. The children can't join in. It's always taking that moment just to think. You pitch up before you start. Again, we're just trying to set children up to achieve, not fail. And it's just little things like our preparation that really help them to be able to get into it, because you don't want a child not to join in with a song, and actually it's not because they're not engaged, they can't physically sing at the pitch we are if we've started it too low. So this is just an example of really simple, as you can see. So this is just a So Me song. Hey, hey, look at me, I am waving, copy me. So 4 lines, not too many words, really clear to break it down so they can hear what you're singing. The hey, hey, look at me. They can clearly hear what they're trying to copy. The pitch isn't moving about too much. Again, they can anchor in quite easily. And then, as I said, it brings in that animation. Look at me. What am I looking at? Waving. And another time, jumping, hopping, clapping. And as I said, the children can bring those in. And it gives them a chance to lead. And in time, they can sing the hey, hey, look at me. Or even they sing the words, you sing the hey, hey, look at me, I am, and they sing waving. And you can build it up, because if you start with simple ones, you can actually then get more depth out of it. That's hey, hey, look at me. Now, I'll just teach you the song before I come on to this one. So, fast forward a little bit. So that was a hey, hey, just 2 pitches. So I'm going to move on to a 5-pitch one now. Do, re, mi, fa, so. And it starts with a So Me. It's Big Black Train, if you know it. I was doing this in nursery today. They had me all over the room. I was out of breath. Big black train, big black train, going up the mountain. Big black train, big black train, coming down again. Now, my children at nursery today, 3-year-olds, taught the song for the first time. I think we worked out it was 20-25 minutes we spent on the same song. Now, if you told me when I started early years music classes 10-15 years ago that you'd spend 20-25 minutes on one song, I'd be like, no, they'll get bored, people are disengaged. I kept going because the children wouldn't let me stop, because we sung the song, we sung it straight, we moved up, we down, we then changed the train colours, we started moving around the room, they were following me, others became the leader, then we changed it to moving individually, and it was little blue car, and they were moving around, they were bringing start and stop with it, and they were leading. It went on and on because the children wanted it to, and they were loving it. And that repetition, one of the children I work with today is being tested for autism, and he started off at the other end of the room, and gradually each time we sang, got a bit nearer, then he started joining in with the actions, and at the end I was getting black and train, really clearly black and train every time, which was absolutely fantastic. Now I'm going to show you a couple of videos. Now, because, as I said, about a good thing of keeping your repertoire not too big so they can really get their heads around it and know it, is that they then bring it into other things. So this is a little girl whose mum took this video at home. She said, oh, what's this song she's singing? Now, it's not quite right. She said, does the going up the mountain, and she actually never gets to the coming back down again. But I'll just play it for you.
Black train, big black train, going up the mountain. Big black train, big black train, going down the mountain. Big black train, going up the mountain. Big black train, going down again.
Bless her. She got to the end before she realised how to go down. But you could hear, couldn't you, how clear the big black train, and how clearly it was. Whereas sometimes, and again, I'm not saying they don't have a place, but sometimes when you go, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a grip, well, the kids, it's far harder for them to accurately, well, both get the pitching and also the clarity of that speech. So often the repetition as well, you could hear how clear that was. And that was just her at home repeating it for parents. But you notice how she kept in time as well. Big black train, big black train, because it was simpler. You're able, those lovely musical principles are there and steady underneath. Now the next video is this, it's the same song, And it's the same girl, and it's a little boy. Actually, it's my little boy. But in nursery, this was them just bringing the same song into the free play. And at nursery, there's a little grassy bank. And I'll show you what they were just doing.
Big black train, big black train. Big black train.
So they'd realised that they've got a grassy bank and they were going up, and they were linking to the song they know well, adding in the going up and down and singing in a context. So this is what I said about by giving them a repertoire, they then, it doesn't just stay in music time as a song we sing, it becomes something that comes into other areas of their learning as well. So it's something that started very much as a speech and language project, as it were. You could see the growth, musical growth that was taking place, the musical development, as well as the enjoyment, and then them equipping them to improvise, bring it into play, not just, as I said, in that adult-led music, it became a tool to them. That music is for enjoyment. So that is great, really, but to be able to do that, it needs to be, as I said earlier, the material that they can repeat. It's got to be something they can totally achieve when it's not in an adult-led situation as well, for that deep learning as well. So material that's accessible and usable and extendable is brilliant, really. So I think my next slide was just showing some of the contextual information. That last video where it went up, it shows that what we have here is a process, not a product. It's not a, I will teach you a rhyme, you'll repeat it, I'll teach you a song to repeat. You can see that it's almost giving them that tools that they can use it in a context and the process of the music there. You can see that it's embedding singing to play and child-led interactions. They don't need the adult to enable it. That music time with the appropriate repertoire has provided tools that those children then they transport to other areas of learning and other parts of the day. They don't just see it as a music time. The enjoyment and opportunity for musical dialogue and play, that positive experience they've had, that there doesn't have to be the adult involvement for that to happen. And it's normalised in the environment. The children have just gone with that. It wasn't a big deal to them. And that was just one video of hundreds I could have shown you of where they just bring in. Another one, it might be where they brought in seesaw, up and down, and they're with a friend and they've made themselves seesaws that they do, where they bring that knowledge they've gained, the language they've gained, but doing it in song into their play. So if singing songs is to aid speech and language development, we need to think about the words we're giving them. Is it developing new words? Is it clearly hearing words they should be able to use now? We need to give them the space to pick up the patterns of the talking or the singing, the intonation. So we need to be at a speed and a pace that allows for that, so that they can really clearly hear those aspects. Repetition, 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 repetition is the absolute key. And therefore the onus on you as a practitioner is, how can I repeat it to aid learning, but in a way that they don't disengage? How can I keep this fresh, something they want to engage in, something that takes it to the next level? And whether it's taken it to the next level with a musical idea, or through adding actions or props or different context or movement, or a different way to enhance experience or bring in a different area of learning. But how can that repetition be fresh while still repeating to embed that learning for them? Adding gestures, actions to reinforce words or beats. As we said, if you're doing language, you need to make sure that your actions are not saying the opposite of the rhyme. There was one I heard the other day, a song, it was a beautiful song about waving flags. It was talking about waving in the sky, and the pitch came down, waving in the sky. And I thought, well, that doesn't work, because you're literally waving in the sky. You need to be lifting up and waving. So if the pitch is coming down, you give to the children, because naturally they're going to follow that pitch and come down. But you see about going up in the sky. So making sure that your material, and if there's actions or props or something you're using it, they're reinforcing each other. If you're talking about climbing the tree, Buster, Buster, climb a tree. Your actions need to be reinforcing that idea, which all allow for that language development, as well as reinforcing that lovely musical feel of the pulse that is just so important to nurture at this stage. As I said, rhymes that explore alliteration, that's starting with the same letter, onomatopoeia, the sounds. Sounds could be a really good one if your children aren't responding easily to words. That musical play or dialogue with that word, where you let them make a sound and you copy it back and you let the child lead that musical dialogue, making sounds or words that sound like it, onomatopoeia, like plop, plop. You could go from sounds they make into onomatopoeic words, leading into other words. You need to start with where the child is at, or if it's a group of children, where they're at, of where to take it. But finding a way to help the child access words might not always be going straight into big words. Oh, I thought I'd got one more, and I haven't. So, as I said, starting what feels simple to us is often the best way to allow for the speech and language. Presenting in a way that's just fun, enjoyable, and the children want to be part of it, and allowing space and time, not seeing it linked that, oh, well, I've done 4 weeks of this and they're not getting it yet. A lot can be going on that they're processing that's not ready to come out yet, which is why I had that slide earlier. This is a process, not a product. So giving space and repetition. So if you're a practitioner going into a setting to do this, it might be that if you're going once a week to do something, that you really work with the staff, that they're doing that repetition daily for you, or that they're giving you feedback about how children are using things in play. If it's that you're leading sessions with parents, at a children's centre or a music class where you've only got that once a week opportunity, it might be, can you record videos or slides or recordings that they could repeat with the children in the week, or asking the parents to do it. Or it's thinking about where your last session finished, so that you don't just keep always moving on, but that you've got that time for consolidation, repetition, building on. So it all depends on what your situation is, but the key thing is using material that you know is going to be really useful and work for the children. So think really carefully about when you choose a rhyme or song, why are you choosing it? What are you trying to achieve through it? Does that rhyme or song allow you to do that? How you can extend these, and how you can give space to the children to extend it. And then through these fun, engaging music times and through the right material, you can really start to see how this gives opportunity for the speech and language development to really come on. So I hope that was helpful. I don't know if there are questions have popped up that I've missed, and I apologise for going too fast earlier.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was so fascinating, and your passion for the subject is so tangible. I'm sure that you've armed everyone here with some really important steps forward to how they're going to work with their early years groups. Do we have any questions directly for Jane? I can see Jane Parker, you've got your hand up.
Jane, thank you. That was brilliant, really fascinating. Where can we read about this project? Did you have something of writing it all up, or
I didn't, because I was not asked to do that. It was mainly practical that I was doing with them, and it's a few years ago now, probably about 3 years ago. I did the first one, and a couple of years ago the second. So no, I haven't, and I don't know. Unfortunately, the lady who asked me to work with this in the early years team, she actually retired. So what would be useful, what I'd like to do, is get back in touch with the settings. 2 or 3 have kept in touch with me and still sort of said, oh, can I have more, can I have more, can I have more? And the hard thing is always, of course, you're kind of not officially on the project anymore, but you want to support the children, so you say, oh, here's them. So it would be really nice to know the follow-up of people, and if they still have an impact, and if they're still using them. I mean, what interestingly, a few people people come back on the circuit where people I've met through this, I then meet them at something else and go, you're the lady who taught me those rhymes. And then they always tell you a story about, oh, it made such a difference for little Johnny because dum 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 dum. So they always have a story about, oh, I was never going to sing in front of my colleagues, and then when you did this I realized I could do this. And it's those, so I've got the anecdotal evidence, but I don't think anything formal was written about it, Jane. Interestingly, a couple of the people I trained now work at my nursery. The people have enjoyed it so much that when vacancies came up at my nursery, they said, we can see this is a difference and we want to be more part of it, which was quite nice. But no, only anecdotal. I mean, the couple of nurseries that it didn't work as well in, when I visited, and it was mainly when the staff hadn't fully engaged in it. But because the staff hadn't fully engaged, they weren't really bringing it into the day, and therefore the children didn't get the opportunity to engage. So the 2 or 3 that didn't carry on, I would say it was the staff, not the children. One nursery just straight away was, oh, it doesn't work for our children. And I said, have you tried it? Yes, I did one session. So I think it was where the staff either didn't get it, didn't give it the time, didn't have the time, didn't have the confidence. I think you needed someone in each setting who had the confidence, say, well, I'm just going to go for this and I'm not going to worry what my peers think. Because that can often be the thing, can't it, if you've got nurseries with younger females who want to, oh, I'm not singing. But that's where the rhymes, in a few weeks of rhymes, a lot of them said, oh, I'm not sure about songs. And we said, don't worry about songs, let's just go with rhymes. Before they knew it, they were into the songs.
Okay, Jane, so your mission next time is, that's got to be a funded project, because it sounds really, really good. So
I mean, I did one through the university that I did with Newcastle University. I don't know if any of you there. I did a presentation about 3 years ago, and Jessica Pitt came. I did it with Julia Partington and people. We looked at, it was more looking at expressions of musicality, and some of those videos I used and others, and we basically recorded the children in setting at home with the parents and asked the parents to record, so we could see how much them doing these musics and songs in nursery they were bringing into their musical life, and how much it was equipping them to impromptu use it rather than just sing a song and repeat it. So we took hundreds of videos trying to look at all the links and the layers of musicking and what was going on in these videos. And I've used that for training and conferences to help people see that what to them is just a 3-year-old singing a song, unpicking all the music that's going on and where it can go. That was fascinating, and I've got a bit more on that, and seeing what can be achieved through it.
That sounds good. Thanks, Jane.
That's all right.
Thank you so much. Really good.
Jane, we've had a request if we could see that last slide again.
Oh, of course.
If you could show that. And
let's
also,
see how we could do it. Yeah.
Also, if we've had a request, if you'd be happy sharing the whole PowerPoint presentation with the group.
Oh, I might just have to remove the videos before I do.
That's absolutely fine. So
videos,
if you're happy to share an edited version.
Yes, yeah, I just obviously I've got
group.
permission from the parents to use it as training, but I think rather than obviously safeguarding everyone, rather than just sending those out where they could be used, I'll remove the videos, but I could put a little transcript of what was happening in the videos. Fantastic. On the slide. I'll do that.
Sounds
so you
great.
want the last screen, right?
So yeah, we've just had a request to see that last slide.
Right.
Again.
Now wait for my technical knowledge here. Hang on. Let me get it for you. 2 seconds, the last one. Whee! The summary. Here we go.
Great.
Hang on. Has that appeared?
No.
Where's it?
So it's the slide before that, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
The one on, hang on.
The one with the summary.
Yeah.
We just got the black square.
Hang on. Right. Mum,
that's black. Could you maybe, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's an arrow.
Hang on. Let's have another go. Optimize for video clip? No.
So we were able to see that you were sharing the screen, it just wasn't the right slide.
No, I haven't got a black slide on there, it's just coming up as black. Can you see it now?
Yes.
It's when I was doing it as a presentation and saying show from current slide, that's why it's going black.
Right, it's gone black again.
Hang on. That's the words, if that helps.
Brilliant.
Yes, it's when I'm pressing to do it as a slide, that's when it's going black.
Yeah, that'll be fine. We can see the words.
To
I'm
see
sure
those words.
that's exactly what they want. Does anybody else have any questions? I can't actually see everybody right now. Now we've got a shared screen. So if you do want to ask a question, could you just unmute yourself or pop it in the chat? Okay, Bryony.
Hiya. I just had a question. Interested in your nursery, Jane. How much the impact of COVID and language has been in your children?
Yeah, it has hit. I mean, COVID's hit a lot of nurseries, and I think it's hit so many different aspects. We found children in general are a lot harder to settle. They've had that gap away. Things like attention span, focus. It has had so many impact on behaviour patterns and types that therefore, on one hand, the music's been a really familiar tool, coming into something familiar that's helped the ones who were already in the nursery to settle. But we have found a difference for those who are totally new to the setting. There've been other aspects we've needed to settle because there's been so much going on for them. So yes, COVID still now is having a big impact on how, I mean, if you think for 2 years of the children's lives being affected, the 2-year-olds now, it's all they've been through. So we've also just as well that children haven't been to, often children go to groups with parents and carers, and a lot of them haven't had that experience, so they haven't had the socialisation or even just that familiarity of someone adult leading a session or that interaction or knowing what to do. So I have to say it has impacted in several factors with that, but we're still doing the music times within nursery. We're still doing what we do, but we're having to adapt things slightly just because of the experiences the children have or haven't had. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
We've got another question, Jane, that's come up in the chat. So do you make up all the songs yourself, or are some from published books? And if so, are there any books you could recommend for rhymes for toddlers?
Yes. I'll be honest, my repertoire has come from a variety of different places. Sometimes you go on courses and you hear what you cherry pick what works. I mean, sometimes you go on a course and you hear a fantastic one and you try it in your setting, it doesn't actually work. So what I use now is the ones that are tried and tested, that I've used over time and find really do work. So yes, there is all sorts of books. There's National Youth Choir of Scotland and ICOS resources. Lots of Lucinda's books are great. Trying to think who else. There's the British Kadai Academy. There's ones there that are useful. So I tend to, there was the Voices Foundation Inside Music Early Years. That's really good. Again, these books will have hundreds of songs and I'll probably use 10 of them. And use well, and I work what I do and what things, but it's always good going on courses and getting an idea of new ones, and then you either make them your own or they drop off. I have written some of my own, particularly for the setting. So with my nursery being Do Re Mi, I was able to write quite a few songs around obviously the Do Re Mi, Do Re Mi, Do Re Mi. It's the place to be with Reuben, with Lottie. So I've made up songs that I use for the setting. So it was very awkward when I've got my York setting and I can't use any of my Do Re Mi songs because it doesn't mean anything to them. But the identity aspect for nursery, that it's a song about them and the name of their nursery, helps the engagement as well. And when I used to do that with my music classes, that unfortunately I stopped those in COVID, I haven't restarted the ones with parents carers. They used to like come into the Do Re Mi. It was something about the identity of writing some of your own about your setting or your context, gives it that familiarity as well. So there are lots of places with, and I could do a short list of some songs and rhymes, or I could do I'll tell you what, I could add on a list of some of the books that you can get them for. And then there's other there's books as well on singing with early years. Zoe Green Egg's book on music in early years, and there's quite a few really good resources out there. So I'll put together a list for you to share.
That would be great.
And that doesn't mean any others aren't good, it's just they're the ones that I've tended to use.
I'm going to plug our new early years resource now, which is Music Makers, and it's a book of 10 10 songs for the early years, and each song has also got a list of activities attached to it, and also a YouTube link, so you can click on the YouTube link and see the practitioner singing it and demonstrating it and the activities related to it. So we will send you information about that, and you will have that as a free gift if you join our network, or you can buy it separately as well. So we're coming to 7 o'clock. Does anybody else have any final questions before we wrap up? So give us a shout if you do.
Hello.
Hello, Paula.
Hi, Paula. Yeah, hi. Hi, Jane. Hi, Sarah.
Hiya.
Just a quick one. I work in a school setting with early years, taught together with reception.
Right.
So we have rising threes. So our children are a little bit older, but they are still, there's a definite issue post-COVID with speech and language development in that age group, running right through the early part of school. Music and singing is very embedded in our school, and we do it very regularly. But other principles about what you talked about, keeping things simple and doing more repetition and rhyme, and simple songs, I assume that could flow through the different age groups, almost
Absolutely.
taking it. I'm just wondering, having listened to you, I maybe need to take it back a notch, because we've been singing such a part of our school, and they've been very advanced, if you like, in the past, that I assume the same principles would work with speech and language development, even with slightly older children.
Yes, you'll probably find with older children you get through it quicker, but it's that starting the same point as I said earlier about learning to read. Just because they're older doesn't mean you throw Harry Potter at them, but you'd expect them to get there quicker. You just have to think about the material you're using. There might be certain songs or rhymes you'd use with 2-year-olds that wouldn't work quite so well with a 4-year-old. Then there's others that they love whatever their age. If they up like a rocket, things like that, and reach up high, crouch down low. You know, that's getting them confident with their voice and joining in and slowing the voice down. Those work whatever age. It's just how you present it in a way that's accessible to them, that they want to join in, engage and achieve with. And that's the pedagogy side, isn't it? Of make your children, you engage with them, you've got that relationship with them of making them feel. But yes, start simple, and then you should accelerate quicker, but you need to get those basics right in order to move into the song. Otherwise later on you try to unpick things from earlier.
And did you, I mean, talking about obviously embedding things with the early years practitioners, I was a qualified teachers or TAs rather than nursery nurses, about how they speak to the children, and how when they're teaching or a rhyme or something about, I'm just wondering whether that's really important for me to stress that with the teachers without sounding like I'm dictating, but just saying how they speak, and when they're teaching something or going through their own rhymes and singing is super important about diction and pace. I don't think that's something that day-to-day teachers perhaps have thought about unless they've been told about it.
It's that bringing it to life, and it's almost the being your big kid yourself, isn't it? And I think there's particularly, I mean, I do a lot of teacher training, and I think over the years people do seem to engage. I don't know, I think there's people don't want to make a fool of themselves, do they? And they're less comfortable doing that sort of getting stuck in. And often it can be daft things like, say, before you do it with the children, practice yourself at home in front of a mirror and see the difference it makes. Or you even demonstrating to them that if you just go, mice, mice, eating up the rice, nibble, 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 nice, nice, nice. They've said the rhyme, but that's going to have no impact, no teaching. And you can repeat that till the cows come home. It won't help the children's speech and language. It's all about enabling the children, whatever age they are, to access what you're doing to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you very much.
But that's where rhymes might help the staff as well. That sort of getting lost in it, if they're then worrying about their singing as well and looking daft, sometimes getting stuck in with the rhymes, they find that bit more accessible as well. Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. We will have to wrap up there. Really such a great and accessible session. So thank you for presenting so clearly for us all. Just as we wrap up, just to flag to you, we have put a link in the chat for an evaluation form. It's really useful for us to know what we might want to present to you in the future, and for you to feedback anything